Have you ever felt weighed down by the past, by memories, roles, or even objects that feel impossible to release? Letting go can be one of life's greatest challenges, especially as we grow older. But what if the struggles you face hold the keys to a lighter, freer you? In this journey, we'll uncover 15 surprising struggles women over 70 face when letting go, and more importantly, how to break free today. Ready to discover your path to freedom? Let's begin. 1. Difficulty letting go of past roles. I still remember the day my youngest son moved out of the house. I stood in his empty room, the sunlight streaming through the window, casting long shadows on the walls. I felt a mix of pride and profound loss, as if a part of my identity had packed its bags and left with him. For decades, I had been mom, the chauffeur, the homework helper, the one who made the world feel safe. Suddenly, I didn't know who I was without that role. But here's what I learned over time. My identity wasn't lost. It was waiting to be rediscovered. At first, I busied myself with anything that would fill the void. I joined every club and took up every hobby I could find, but none of it felt right. It wasn't until I allowed myself to slow down and ask, what brings me joy now, that I began to see the possibilities. For some of you, letting go of a role might mean redefining who you are after retirement or after losing a partner. It's not easy, but you don't have to figure it all out at once. Start by trying something small, a cooking class, a gardening project, or volunteering in your community. You'll find that with each little step, you're not replacing what you've lost, but adding to the richness of who you are. 2. Clinging to physical items tied to memories. I used to keep a drawer full of scarves. Not just any scarves. Scarves that belonged to my late mother. They carried her scent, her style, her essence. Every time I opened that drawer, I felt close to her. But over the years, the drawer became less a source of comfort and more a symbol of weight I couldn't let go of. One day, I decided to take them all out and lay them on my bed. I touched each one, remembering the stories they held. The red scarf she wore to church every Sunday, the silk one she brought back from a trip abroad. Instead of holding on to all of them, I chose the one that meant the most to me and donated the rest to a women's shelter. Knowing that someone else might wear them and feel a little more beautiful brought me an unexpected sense of peace. For many of us, physical items become emotional anchors, and it's hard to imagine life without them. If you're struggling with this, start small. Choose 1 or 2 items that truly resonate with you, and find a meaningful way to honor the memories they hold. Frame a photo, write a story, or even start a new tradition in their honor. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means making room for new memories to come. 3. Fear of change and the unknown. When my neighbor Mary told me she was moving to a smaller apartment, I could see the anxiety in her eyes. I've lived in this house for 40 years, she said, clutching her teacup. What if I hate the new place? What if it never feels like home? Her fears were valid. Change is hard. But I reminded her of the time she went back to school in her 50s, terrified of being the oldest person in the classroom, and ended up making lifelong friends. You've already proven to yourself that you can handle change, I told her. This is just one more chapter. When Mary moved, I visited her a few weeks later. Her apartment wasn't just cozy. It was alive with new energy. She'd rearranged her furniture, hung up family photos, and even joined a book club in her new neighborhood. I never thought I'd say this, she told me, but I feel lighter here. If you're facing a big change, whether it's moving, starting a new routine, or trying something unfamiliar, remind yourself of the changes you've already overcome. Break it down into smaller steps, like Mary did with her apartment. Start with one corner, one decision, one step forward. Change can be intimidating, But on the other side of fear is a life filled with possibility. Fourth, holding on to toxic relationships. I once had a friend, Carol, who I'd known for over 30 years. We'd met when our kids were young, and back then, our friendship was effortless. But as time passed, something shifted. Every conversation seemed to drain me. She'd criticize my choices, compare our lives, and dismiss my joys as trivial. I kept telling myself, but we've been friends for decades. I can't just walk away. It wasn't until one afternoon, when I hung up after yet another exhausting phone call, that I realized I wasn't doing myself any favors. I sat in my kitchen, sipping tea, and asked myself, why am I holding on to something that makes me feel this way? Letting go of a toxic relationship doesn't mean you stop caring about the person. It means you care enough about yourself to prioritize your peace. If you're in a similar situation, take a step back and evaluate how the relationship makes you feel. Does it lift you up or does it weigh you down? You don't have to make a dramatic exit. Sometimes it's as simple as setting boundaries or gradually spending less time engaging with that person. And if it's too difficult to step away completely, remember this. It's okay to protect your energy. You deserve relationships that make you feel valued and joyful. 5. Overcoming guilt from saying no. I used to be a yes woman. Whenever someone asked me for help or invited me somewhere, my instinct was to agree, even if I was exhausted. It wasn't until my daughter pulled me aside one day and said, "Mom, you don't have to say yes to everything," that it hit me. I'd been saying yes out of guilt, not because I genuinely wanted to. The turning point came when a neighbor asked me to help organize a local event. I had just spent the morning babysitting my grandkids, and all I wanted was to curl up with a book. My old self would have agreed, but instead, I took a deep breath and said, "I'd love to, but I need to rest today." To my surprise, she smiled and said, "Of course, I understand." Saying no doesn't mean you're letting people down. It means you're honoring your own needs. The next time you feel pressured to agree to something, pause and ask yourself, is this what I truly want to do? If the answer is no, say it with kindness. You don't owe anyone an explanation beyond, "I'm not able to right now." Trust me, the world won't fall apart if you take care of yourself first. 6. Struggling to accept help from others. My pride has always been a double-edged sword. I've prided myself on my independence, raising 3 kids on my own, and managing a household like a pro. But after my knee surgery last year, I found myself in unfamiliar territory. I needed help. My daughter offered to buy groceries for me, and my neighbor volunteered to drive me to appointments, but I kept brushing them off, insisting, "I've got it." One day, my daughter showed up unannounced with a bag of groceries. She sat me down and said, "Mom, letting me help doesn't make you weak. It shows you trust me." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I realized my resistance wasn't just about pride. It was about fear. Accepting help made me feel vulnerable, as though I was losing control. What I've come to understand is that allowing others to support you isn't a sign of weakness. It's a gesture of love. When you let someone help you, you're giving them the chance to show they care. Start small if it feels overwhelming. Accept a ride. Let someone carry a heavy bag or ask for advice. You might be surprised at how much closer it brings you to the people in your life. 7. Feeling defined by societal expectations. I can't count the number of times someone has said, "At your age, you shouldn't be worrying about things like that." It was a passing comment, maybe about trying on a pair of heels I loved or wanting to take a photography class. But those words lingered longer than I'd like to admit. For years, I felt boxed in by what people thought I should or shouldn't do, simply because of the number of candles on my birthday cake. One day, my granddaughter, only 12 at the time, said something that shook me. I was debating whether or not to wear a bright yellow dress to a family gathering. She looked at me with her big, curious eyes and asked, "Why wouldn't you? You love yellow." That moment, so simple and innocent, made me realize how much I'd been holding myself back. If you've ever felt limited by what others expect of you, I want to tell you something. You are not a stereotype. You are not bound by anyone's rules but your own. Whether you want to take up salsa dancing, start a new career, or wear the boldest shade of lipstick you can find, do it. Because the truth is, people's opinions fade, but the joy you feel in being yourself lasts forever. 8. Comparing yourself to others. When I was in my 60s, I had a habit of flipping through magazines and wondering why I didn't look like the women on those glossy pages. Their perfect hair, glowing skin, and bright smiles seemed miles away from the tired reflection staring back at me. I'd think, why can't I age like that? Then one day, during a trip with a group of friends, something remarkable happened. We were sitting by a lake, laughing about an old story, and I caught my reflection in the water. There I was, laugh lines, gray streaks in my hair, and all. For the first time, I saw myself as more than an image. I saw the years of laughter, the sleepless nights caring for my kids, the strength it took to keep going when life felt overwhelming. If you found yourself comparing your life or appearance to someone else's, let me remind you, those comparisons are illusions. They don't tell the whole story of who you are. The next time you catch yourself doing it, pause and think about what makes you unique. Your experiences, your resilience, your kindness. Those are the things that make you truly beautiful. 9. Fear of expressing your true self. For the longest time, I hid my love for painting. It wasn't practical, I told myself. It wasn't something I could share with others, so why bother? But deep down, I always felt this pull. A little voice that whispered, "What if?" It wasn't until my 70th birthday that I decided to listen to that voice. My family had planned a big party, but all I wanted was a quiet evening with a blank canvas and a set of paints. When I finally finished my first piece, a messy, colorful mix of emotion and freedom, I felt something I hadn't in years: pride. Maybe you've been hiding a part of yourself too. Maybe it's a hobby you've always wanted to try, a style you've been afraid to wear, or a dream you've kept buried for fear of judgment. Here's the thing: the world is full of people, but there's only one you. Letting that true self shine is the greatest gift you can give yourself and everyone around you. 10. Reliving past mistakes. I was sitting in my garden one sunny afternoon, pruning my roses, when an old memory crept up on me. It was something I hadn't thought about in years, a decision I made in my 40s that led to a fallout with a dear friend. For some reason, that day, it hit me like a wave of regret. I sat there replaying the conversation, wishing I could go back and say things differently. Later, as I brewed my evening tea, I thought about how often we let the past live rent-free in our minds. But the truth is, no amount of rehashing will change what happened. What it can do, though, is remind us of the lessons we learned. For me, that mistake taught me the value of listening, of giving others grace, and of forgiving myself when I fall short. If you've been carrying the weight of old regrets, try this. Write yourself a letter. Pour it all out. The things you wish you had said, the decisions you wish you could change. Then, at the end of the letter, write the words, "I forgive you." Whether you tear it up or tuck it away in a drawer, let it be a release. You've learned, you've grown, and that's what matters most. 11th, holding grudges against loved ones. A few years ago, my sister and I had a falling out. It was over something silly. Who should host Thanksgiving that year? But it grew into something bigger. We didn't speak for months. Every time I thought about calling her, my pride got in the way. She should apologize first. I tell myself. Then one day, I got a call from her daughter saying she was in the hospital after a fall. I rushed over, and as soon as I saw her, everything else melted away. It didn't matter who was right or wrong. What mattered was that I loved her, and I didn't want to waste another day being angry. If there's someone in your life you've been holding a grudge against, ask yourself this: is the grudge worth the time you're losing? Pick up the phone, write a note, or simply let it go in your heart. Forgiveness doesn't mean condoning what happened. It means freeing yourself from the bitterness that weighs you down. Life is too short to spend it clinging to anger. 12. Struggling with grief or loss. After my husband passed away, I spent months pretending I was fine. I'd smile when people asked how I was doing, but inside, I felt like a ship lost at sea. I thought keeping busy would help, so I joined clubs, hosted dinners, and filled my days with activity. But at night, when the house was quiet, the grief would settle in like an unwelcome guest. One evening, I came across a photo of the two of us from a trip we took to Italy. Instead of pushing the memory away, I let myself feel it, the joy of that moment, the ache of missing him. I realized then that grief isn't something you can outrun. It's something you have to sit with, honor, and carry with you in a way that doesn't stop you from living. If you're grieving, know that it's okay to take your time. There's no right way to heal. What helped me was creating small rituals to honor his memory, like lighting a candle on special days or journaling about our favorite moments together. Those rituals didn't erase the grief, but they softened it, reminding me that love doesn't end. It simply takes a new form. 13. Hesitation to try new experiences. I remember the first time someone invited me to a yoga class. I was in my late 60s, and my immediate reaction was, "Oh, that's not for me." The thought of stretching on a mat in a room full of strangers felt completely out of my comfort zone. I laughed it off, thinking it was for younger, more flexible people. Months later, my neighbor Anna, who's a year older than I am, mentioned how much she enjoyed the class. She said, "You know, I felt the same way at first, but it's not about how well you can do it. It's about showing up for yourself." Her words stayed with me. The following week, I decided to give it a try. I was clumsy, I wobbled, and I even fell once. But something amazing happened. By the end of the class, I felt a sense of accomplishment that I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about proving to myself that I could try something new. If you've been hesitating to step into unfamiliar territory, whether it's a hobby, a group, or an activity, remember this: no one is watching you as closely as you think. Start small, a trial class, a single book from a new genre, or a short trip to a place you've never been. The courage to take that first step is all you need to discover something wonderful. 14. Fear of deepening connections. For years after my husband passed, I kept people at arm's length. I tell myself, I'm fine on my own. I don't need anyone else. But deep down, I think I was scared. Scared of opening up again, of trusting someone and then losing them. One afternoon, while volunteering at the library, I met Margaret, a retired teacher with a quick wit and a kind heart. She'd invite me for coffee, and I'd politely decline, finding some excuse to stay in my safe bubble. But she didn't give up on me. One day, she showed up with a thermos of tea and 2 cups saying, "If you won't come to the coffee shop, I'll bring the coffee shop to you." That simple act of kindness broke down my walls. We sat on the library steps, sipping tea and laughing about her stories from teaching. Margaret became one of the closest friends I've ever had, and I often wonder what I would have missed if I hadn't let her in. If you're afraid to deepen connections, remind yourself that the joy of companionship far outweighs the risk of loss. Open yourself up to small moments, a chat with a neighbor, a walk with a new friend. Connection doesn't have to be instant. It grows over time, and it's worth every bit of effort. 15. Underestimating your own strength. And last year, my granddaughter asked me to help her bake cookies for a school fundraiser. I hadn't baked in years and immediately thought, I'll just mess it up. But when I saw the hopeful look on her face, I decided to give it a try. We measured flour, cracked eggs, and laughed at how messy the kitchen got. By the end of the afternoon, we had a tray of slightly lopsided but delicious cookies. My granddaughter hugged me and said, "Grandma, you're the best baker ever." I laughed, but her words stuck with me. That day reminded me of all the times I'd underestimated myself, not just in baking, but in life. It's so easy to forget how capable we are, especially when faced with new challenges. But if we look back, we'll see countless moments where we've risen to the occasion, surprising even ourselves. If you've been doubting your ability to handle something new or difficult, think about all the obstacles you've already overcome. Write them down if you have to. A list of every moment you proved yourself wrong. Sometimes, a little reflection is all it takes to reignite your confidence and remind you of the strength that's always been within you. You've just taken a powerful step toward letting go of what holds you back and stepping into your strength, joy, and radiance. Remember, you are more than your past. You're a masterpiece in progress, full of wisdom, beauty, and possibility. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What's one thing you're ready to release today? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join our community of inspiring women. And stay tuned. We've got even more tips and stories to keep you shining bright. See you soon.